Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. I appreciate your opening remarks and then the transition from the panel that Jeff just led into this conversation. As we talk about, capacity building tools, strategic partnerships that can help us address the problems that we talked about in the first session, and that you underscored with your perspective, Ambassador, on the environmental challenge that we're facing, particularly in the maritime domain and the undersea environment. We have a slogan in the Navy when I first came in many, many years ago: join the Navy, see the world. The the small print, though, they don't tell you is that the world is 67% water.
Yes.
And so a lot of folks get misled by that, but I think that's a happy happenstance, if you will, for what I focus on. Um, Currently at the Near East South Asia Center, my specialty area is focusing on professional military education, and really educational best practices that can be shared with partners to build their capacity and capability. Most of our partners end up being the strategic level of education that usually a Ministry of Defense or an interagency entity in a country has, that builds and trains and educates national security professionals who usually will be in positions, junior positions in staff, or at the very senior level in decision-making positions to develop policy for a nation. By focusing on bringing educational best practices to our partners, the goal is that capacity will improve, but also through a series of interactions, we develop close relationships and trust, which allows us then to come together and talk about things that we disagree on and things that we agree on. And by going at it through the educational channels, we're able to actually break down under Chatham House rule conduct, really the barriers to sharing ideas. One thing I've learned in my career as a strategic planner and an educator has been that when you bring a room of folks together with diverse ideas, you're going to come out with something much better at the end than if a group of folks who are like-minded think about a problem set. The best answers are those that are developed through sharing. So what I want to talk about for just a couple of minutes are some of the things that we have done in the realm of professional military education, which I think will help, with most of our partners, developing national security professionals who can then focus on the maritime domain and undersea domain areas. In all of our programs, we integrate topically the maritime domain because many of our partners, particularly in the Middle East, aren't thinking about the maritime domain, but they're all impacted by it. When you think about supply chains, when you think about them getting their goods to market, if you think about their food and energy security and global warming and sea level rise, and of course, natural disasters, many of which come from the sea, every country that we deal with has a stake in this realm. So some of the things that we do under our professional military education programs are to focus really on the faculty. The students are a byproduct of what we do. And I'm going to imitate, happenstance-wise, Dr. Das, earlier you talked about your frameworks. Our framework here at the Near East South Asia Center is very similar. We focus on engagement, outreach, and education as our three primary vehicles or pathways to interact with our partners. So if we can get in and work with a partner, the things that we are keenly interested in doing are things like developing a faculty, reviewing curriculum inside of a potential university, develop methodologies to deliver the curriculum that are based on adult learning models and outcome-based education best practices. We also have the ability, because we're co-located with the National Defense University here in Washington, and I know that a couple of my peers that are on the call have helped out the Near East South Asia Center as we interact with partners, because we bring subject matter expertise to the table to help fill out faculty gaps that a partner institution might have. We also focus specifically on the development of strategic leaders, teaching leadership and strategy development, strategic decision-making, strategic crisis management, organizational change management, because as you're instituting strategies, you're going to be changing things as you go. And then, of course, topically, thanks to Jeff Payne, nearly every one of our programs includes a component of maritime awareness as folks are exploring that area. So trying to get our partners to turn away from their sometimes contested land borders or their water security issues with a neighbor and focus on the supply chain leaving and the supply chain coming into their countries. And why, for instance, a conflict in Russia and Ukraine might be important because of things like bread security in the region. So we also bring along with us a capability to do strategic decision-making exercises and tabletop exercises. And this is actually a place where we've had great success in bringing partners who disagree together to talk about the very thing that they disagree on in a way that's constructive. And the South Asia Center has 13 strategic partnerships with institutions in our region, and we're growing that number more. We've been deepening that relationship over time, and we've been working on things related to this domain in nearly every one of our sessions. I'll give you an example of just some of the things. I call them the elephants in the room. These are the things that sometimes folks don't want to talk about that we are able to unpack with our partners. Global warming and climate change, natural disasters, and how to better respond and prepare for those. In the maritime domain, we've already talked about trade and industry, natural resources and fisheries, but also the communications, both below on the seabed for when it comes to the internet and mass global communications, but also communications on the surface of the water through shipping and shipping lanes. And I think we've been very astutely unpacking the communication pathways in the undersea domain through submarines and unmanned vehicles. We also spent a lot of time talking about energy, food, and water security, and then also countering non-state actors when it comes to things like piracy, violent extremist organizations, and countering synthetic narcotics. Those are other things that are in this domain that I think we need to be mindful of. And of course, cybersecurity and emerging technologies. One thing I did want to point out, we spent a lot of time talking about conflict. Obviously, the conflict in Gaza and Israel and then in Lebanon, as well as the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, has an impact in the maritime domain that's pretty significant. I know when we talk to, for instance, our partners in Egypt, and they're looking at the loss of commercial revenue through the canal. When you look at the loss of tourist revenue inside of Jordan, our folks aren't going to the Red Sea to do much diving right now based on the conflicts. There's all these other kind of residual impacts when you think about the Indian Ocean and the rim, as Jeff talked about it. Everybody has the potential to gain something and also to lose something if we're not working together. And I think I'll kind of end it with this. In many cases, by working with educational institutions and this nexus of government and civilian leadership, you can do it in both a bilateral and a multilateral way. Oftentimes, the bilateral environment is important because maybe a partner doesn't want to sit down at the table with a neighboring with which when they're having a dispute, or a multilateral non-threatening educational opportunity allows partners that might necessarily disagree to come together and maybe talk about things that they disagree with. And then I think a final thought that's come out in nearly every one of our events that we've conducted over the last couple of years. Some of the smaller nations definitely have the ability to find a niche capability in the world of professional military education and can then be a force multiplier in delivering to partners in that same context. I'll give you just some examples without referring to nations by name. But if a nation has become very good at planning and preparing for disaster response, they can take that capability, that ability to plan, take that to another partner and work with them. And this is a case where we've been encouraging our bilateral partners to find that one key capability that they have. Another example is countering synthetic narcotics. There's a couple of countries that are becoming very good at understanding this problem set. And then through a professional military education program, can share that expertise with a partner. So they can bring something to the table that then a partner could then share back with them something from their area of expertise. So with that, I'll stop it and cede my time back to the ambassador and for the other speakers, and I look forward to hearing from them. And thank you for including me today.